Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. Good to be here with you once again at OC Talk Radio. In today's show, I intend you and I to get a bit philosophical.
I like that.
Well, we'll see. I'd like to explore, what I'd like to do is explore the interrelationship of past, present, and future. You know, we live in this day of mindfulness and presence, and where everything must be in the present, but the past and the future are great indicators and influencers on what is happening in the present, and I want to talk about that.
Okay.
And you know, there's this interesting philosophical conundrum, and that technically we live life in the present, right?
We think we do.
But it is fleeting and can always change, sometimes drastically, almost in an instant. And when you think about it, it's crazy. I mean, this is literally crazy. The present is instantly becoming the past as it coincidentally, almost immediately turns out to be the future as well. Yeah. So where are we living in the past, present, future?
And is there a present? Really, if you want to think of it that way, the present moves so quickly that you can't even capture it. The minute you say it, it's the past.
Yeah, you know, and I think I totally agree with you, and that was the purpose of that statement. But I think we have to think of the present more broadly, and we have to think of the present in not only days, but in weeks and perhaps even months, as this is a current phase, that they are phases. They are not Einsteinian
quark minutes or something.
Yes, yes. But and so when we're talking about the present, we're talking about where we are today in our life. In our present could be a day, a week, a month. I wouldn't want to give it much longer than that. But what I'd like to do is get right into the subject rather than a long introduction. And
okay.
I have several questions.
So let me ask you a question before you do.
Okay,
so define the present. What for you? When you think of I'm living in the present times, my present stage, my present life, because I have an answer for that. How long do you picture that present horizon? How far out does the present go back or forward for you?
Well, it certainly only goes forward because I'm a future-oriented person.
Okay.
Personally.
So the minute it's over, yesterday is the past.
It is the past, but it is impacting today, as we'll talk about. And so I would look at the present, as I said earlier, I would look at the present for me as probably the last week. That would be my present. And as I'm preparing for the future weeks to come, future couple of weeks to come. But perhaps just a week, but during that time, well, we'll discuss the present in a minute. And
I have a longer time frame, and I don't know why. This is no philosophical reason, but I've noticed it throughout my whole life, more so as I get older. The present to me is the past couple of months and the next couple of months. It's about a 6-month horizon. And I always say that for one reason. If you ask me what I'm going to be doing in the next couple of months, I can probably tell you. I know where I'm going. I know I've got a calendar. My calendar goes out about a month or two. I can my life doesn't seem to change much from week to week. But over a 6-month period, it changes. And I can only see out. I don't know why, but I can't see the horizon past about 3 or 4 months out.
Well, I think you just convinced me of changing my week thing. I don't know if I can go 6 months, but I would go like 4 months. I could say that is the present. What do I have? What have I done? What do I have planned for the future, for the immediate future? And what am I doing now? Those are sort of my present.
Yeah.
That's my present.
That's the period of time I live in. I hold on to things for a month or two. Gee, I'm just getting over this. I just went through this. And then I'm kind of thinking about what's going to happen over the next couple of months, and that's about as far as my calendar goes. That's about as far as my time horizon goes. I can't see 2 years into the future. I think I can, but it's never what I think it is. But I can kind of predict what's good, barring some unforeseen thing, which always happens. I can see backwards and forwards a couple months.
Well, as I review my life right now, I would really have to agree with you. I think that's really good insight. That I have scheduled at this moment. I have scheduled through February 2nd.
There you go.
And that is my present, because I'm going on a retreat at the end of January and until February 2nd, and those are things I'm looking forward to. Those are things I'm planning toward and saving for. And I've got my son's getting married.
My son, when's he getting married?
He's getting married 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I think it's the 16th
of Congratulations.
November. Yeah. And he wants to buy a house right now. He owns a house. And so he wants to try to sell and buy a house and get married at the same time. This is 27-year-old thinking.
Yeah, that's 27-year-old thinking. Exactly. That's crazy.
But he's in there. He's really, and once he makes up his mind, it's like, okay. But that, I like that stretch of
couple forward, couple back. Yeah.
Couple forward, couple back. And that brings into play the current emphasis that we'll talk later about on mindfulness and presence. Mm-hmm. It's mindfulness and presence in
that period of time,
sort of current moment in life, and the current moments in life are in, like you said, are in 2, 4, 6 month increments.
Yeah. Now some people define it much tighter than that. When I was a wannabe actor and then I represented actors, the famous thing we all know: be in the moment. You're reacting moment. You're not even thinking of what you're going to say next. Don't think about your next line. Focus on what they're saying right now, like you're hearing it for the first time. That's a skill. That's very hard to be that, as your friend Terry always says, to be that present in every conversation and every word. That's a different kinds of presence. That's a really immediacy to it. I'm not even thinking what's going to happen later today.
I'm reading a brilliant book right now that we will discuss in time, and it's by Ryan Holiday, who is the king of titles. He wrote Ego is the Enemy. His second book was The Obstacle is the Way.
Ooh.
And this book is Stillness is the Key. And he's talking about what I am very much into today, which is another podcast, so I want to be careful that we don't get into it, is about peace and tranquility.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing we need over everything else that we're looking to. There's nothing we are looking for more than peace, just to be settled, just to have life be okay. And, I'm not, it certainly has to do with war and that type of peace, but it has to do with a personal tranquility, a personal settledness.
Can I give you an example of that? We do so many shows here, and I feel like I pick up these threads running through the community. And I picked this one up a while ago. We had somebody come in and talk about the spa industry. You go get a massage, you go get a spa or whatever. And there's all these chains. I think they were in from one of these big chains. And the big trend in spas are quiet rooms. You pay to sit in a room that is completely quiet. They will soundproof it so there's no sound in the room. And that is such a sought-out commodity and so hard to find that you will pay to go sit in a perfectly quiet room. Think of that. Why can't you?
That sounds like those, oh my goodness, what are they called?
Immersion tanks.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Immersion tanks, and I failed totally at that.
But the notion that you can't find that anywhere else, so I got to go pay somebody to provide that. Our world is so filled with noise and activity that we will pay just to free ourselves
what
from
Ryan talks about in stillness is the ability to set that aside, because you can't live in a world of unless you pay to go to stillness. There's always noise and distraction.
Yeah. Right.
But we have the capability, we have the mental wherewithal to dismiss that and not be distracted by that. And it's also almost becomes white noise. But that's another subject.
Yes, I look
I
forward
want to
to
move
that
on.
one. Time.
Okay.
It's time to talk about
so
something else.
It's time to talk about time. So tell me, what kind of person are you personally? Are you a past, present, or future-oriented person?
Ooh, you threw me with that one. Okay, you think that would be so simple, and I usually have an instant reaction to all of it. I was a history major, so I'm very into the past and probably dwell too much on the past. I worry about the future too much, I've always been said, and maybe I don't spend enough time in the moment, in the now.
Oh, okay, that's great insight. And I am, as I said earlier, a future-oriented person. I have to be careful that I am not. I think both of us are in the same boat with different circumstances, in that we need to pay attention to the present.
Yes,
more.
right.
Need to pay more attention to, like, even what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what we're doing right now. This is fun. We're sitting here chatting and talking about a topic that hopefully is of interest. It's of interest to us, and we should just be thinking about this and not about, helping my son buy a stinking house. I
can't turn it off. I'm always thinking of what comes next. Always thinking of it. And sometimes it's a curse. My father was the opposite. My father would say, worry about tomorrow when it happens. Now, it isn't that you say you don't plan for tomorrow, but you don't worry about it. I'm always worried about tomorrow, the next hour. Am I going to be on time? Am I going to have enough money? Am I going to do this? Yeah.
That's quoting Jesus, who says, it is. He says, why do you worry about tomorrow when today has enough trouble going on?
Yeah, right.
You don't need to worry about it. Okay,
right.
Here, let's move on. The past, now we're going to begin with the past. We'll do the present, then we'll do the future. And the past can be most helpful, as well as it can become the most damaging of the three.
Yes.
It can create hope or fear. Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard said this about the past: life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forward.
I love that.
Isn't that great?
Life
everything. Can only be understood backward. But it must be lived forward, and that way, the backward, it is informing. It is informing us. It is encouraging us. It is showing us areas of strength, areas that we might want to improve on, areas to enjoy, areas of regret. But that's all it is it's information that's informing us on how to live the present.
But don't you think in many ways it limits us too? I know it has me. Thoughts that were planted into your head as a little kid, painful things you went through that make you gun shy the next time, doubts that you develop or beliefs that you develop along the way, that I can do anything or I can't do something, that limit our choice of actions in the future simply because that's the way it was in the past.
Yes, absolutely. And that is where it takes some mind conditioning,
right,
to where we are thinking about that we can overcome that. I have that. I want to talk that a bit later, and I want to talk that in 12-step processes that people overcome unbelievable pasts. I mean, unbelievably
dysfunctional, terrible, horrible. Yeah,
dysfunctional, terrible, horrible are three good adjectives. Steve Jobs also said something like Soren Kierkegaard. He said, you can always connect the dots in life. And, we're wondering about connect the dots, but you can only do it after they have occurred.
Yeah, right.
Then the dots connect. I heard another illustration that life is like a tapestry, except it is not being sewn in the order of events. It has an event in the middle of it, one in the corner, and one in another corner, one in another spot. And it is only until nearing the end of our days that the tapestry begins to make sense.
Well, of course, I don't know if you've ever, I was in the film business, if you ever saw a movie actually made, they don't shoot it in sequence.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
So they piece it, and the actors are always trying to say, I'm an old man and I'm acting this thing. Now I'm the young man, and I'm trying to piece all these things again. It isn't until the editing room that this all makes sense.
Yeah. So the bottom line here is that in an understanding of the past serves as a helpful informant on how we might proceed in the present and the future. Now, the dysfunctional past, that is where we take small groups, we take therapy, we take consultants, and we work through those and see how much truth there is to that and how much fact there is to that, and not allow that to prevent us from moving forward into a good life and a happy life. But the past is primarily information. And then what we do with that information is another thing.
But let me challenge you one thing here.
Yeah.
I think we live in a time that puts no value in the past. We don't study the past. We don't want to focus on it. We don't want to dwell about it. And we think it has nothing to learn from it. Maybe not the stock market or something, but... And I'll give you an example. One of my dearest friends who died a couple years ago had a troubling youth, abusive father and other things. My wife's kind of like this too. I don't want to talk about anything in the past. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to discuss it. It's over. It's done. It's gone. I'm just looking forward. And that seems to be this positive, dwell on the future, dwell on the possible, not dwell on the past. We don't study history. Everybody hates history. We're not a historical nation. We forget. Here's my favorite exercise. Ask the next 5 people you meet what their great-grandfather's name was. We don't even have that kind of connection to history. We don't even know what our...
Well, don't ask me, because I have no idea.
Yeah, well, and most people don't.
I barely know my grandfather's name.
Yeah, so we don't... That's how short our historical period. Now, you've gone around the world. In Europe, gee, this was built in the 1600s or the 1300s. It's like the past is yesterday to them.
Yes, well, that is because we are a rapidly changing culture. We have not developed. We're an anathema in the world.
Yes.
That what is going on in the United States, and now the degree, the rapidity of change, the exponential aspect of change makes the past almost not quite meaningless, but we're moving forward so fast that we don't take a look at the past.
We throw the past away so quickly. Old buildings, old songs, old ideas, old relationships. We throw them and dispose of them so quickly and never think about them again. Whereas the few times I've been to like Europe, I was in Ireland once, and everything, that was built in the 1300s, that's like yesterday. The 1300s is yesterday. It's not inconceivable to us. 13 days ago is inconceivable to my daughter.
Yeah. Oh, I just got lost in my notes. Forgive me.
Well, you're saying that the past is valuable.
Yeah,
as I view it,
pondering the past is essential. The lessons learned are essential. We gain understanding of our strengths that help us move forward. I know what I'm capable of, and our work areas, but it also serves as an insight on our potentiality. Now, as you have been pointing out, there is a downside to viewing the life from the perspective of the perspective of the past.
Right.
It is not always used as informing as much as it is used as a limiting factor in our lives. Some people, I have known people. I met a person.
I met a people.
Well, I have met a people. I've met several different peoples, but this one that's different. I met a person who, she was not that old. She was in her later 20s, but her entire life was high school. She couldn't talk about any good thing in life except what happened in high school.
Yeah, right.
And that was very, very disturbing for me. And it's like the best years of life. You were talking about the bad years of life, but there are people who really feel the best years of life is past. And
Oh yeah, the football star in high school, whatever. That was his glory, his greatest moment.
And as I look upon retirement, I think much of retirement is that way too. That a lot of people who retire look that their life is over. What am I going to do? Because the best years have gone. When actually, as I'm discovering, the best years are coming up. They're of a different sort.
Right.
You know, they fall into a whole different category, and we have to look at them. We have to look at them quite seriously. Personally, I have a hard time with living in the past, high school, past jobs, or whatever successful events that an individual has resolved will never happen again. I find this depressing and untrue. The wonder of life remains available in the present and in our, let's use our 4-month sort of window of presence. And that is where most of life really occurs, and that's what develops a past. If you have a positive next 4 months or last 2 months, the next 2 months, it informs your life. It informs you. It gives you encouragement to move forward, gives you encouragement to do things that are good for you. As we're transitioning to the present, I still cling to the words of Lanson Ross, spoken in a lecture when I was in seminary in the early 80s.
Wow.
That far back. But this quote has never left me. And the quote is, "You are what you have been becoming."
Say that again.
You are what you have been becoming. So your past definitely influences your present. How you've been working in the past, what you're doing, because your past, as we said, the present quickly becomes the past. And so what we are doing presently is driving what we will do in the future.
Whether you realize it or not, you're becoming something.
You're becoming something. Your character, your personality, your drives, your desires are all being based on the way you're living your life right today. Right today.
We had an author in yesterday. I can't remember the name of the book. I'll try and think of it. And it was about incremental change. We're always looking for big change. And his thesis was it's the accumulation of little things that leads to big change. If you just save $1 a day, if you just get up 10 minutes earlier, if you do these incremental changes over a long enough period of time, you'll see big enough changes. Sort of what you're saying. These little insignificant things lead up to something over time.
Yeah, and there's a great debate about that in business, and I think we've gone back to incremental change. In the 90s, we were talking about step change.
Yes, right.
Not incremental change, but large change, huge change.
Dramatic change, right.
And it's incremental change. Now we live in a day, technologically, where we are talking about step changes that are huge, and I think it's very difficult to adjust to step changes, and that we adjust it to incremental change.
Well, because old models are thrown out instantly.
Yeah.
When Airbnb has instantly more value than Hilton, the whole chain, or Marriott, with all the millions of hotels they have, that suddenly Airbnb has more value because they make more money without the cost. Instantly, something is upended.
Yeah, as long as and now there's all
I
kinds
don't know
of,
if they'll survive.
as long as they'll survive. Well, financially they'll survive, but who knows politically.
Right.
Now, back to Lanson Ross's quote, "You are what you have been becoming." We're moving into the present. And so I think based on that quote, I'm just going to, based on the implications of that quote, "You are what you have been becoming," that makes the present perhaps the most essential of the three. It's what you are doing right now that impacts your life. And that it will impact because it will become part of the past. It impacts the past. and it's definitely going to impact the future. So what you do today, what you do at this moment, impacts your entire life hugely. So many options are available to us every day if we make room for them. Now, for me, I still am wrestling with this and working on this because it's a big change in my life, but it's about reading and writing and movies and interacting with friends, thinking and pondering of the wonder of life. I'm thinking these things as I was writing, times with my family, and of course, Netflix.
Of course. So let me ask you a question, though. All those things you rattled off, important things to do, but they're all relatively minor. Do any of them seem significant? Do you see what you're becoming as you're doing it? Are we Michelangelo who can see the statue in the marble? Or are we just chipping away and not knowing what it's going to look like when it's done?
The answer to that for me, let's not say the answer, the response to that to me is back to your incremental thinking.
Right.
It was when I haven't for a while, but I'm planning on getting back into it, doing meditation.
Okay.
I did meditation for 2 years straight, and I really didn't notice after 2 years a significant difference in my life when I meditated, when I didn't. But now that I'm not doing it, I feel like I need to get back into it again because it is a time for, as Ryan Holiday writes about, it is a time for stillness and shutting out the noise and letting my mind rest and get at peace. So do I think they impact my life? Absolutely. I get ideas from reading and movies. I get ideas from writing. I just wrote a post why talking to yourself is essential. I think that we kind of make fun of people that talk to themselves.
Yeah, they're crazy.
But talking to yourself, I read good writing is merely just talking to yourself.
That's an interesting.
It's a great concept that so I learned from reading and writing, interacting with friends and with acquaintances. There's so much to learn from other people. It's a matter of my psychological state when I walk in. Do I walk in wanting a result, knowing, already have drawn conclusions of what my opinion is on a matter, or do I walk in truly interested in learning? Do I when I'm interacting with friends? Do I want to learn?
Look at the way you travel.
It's
just crazy. You just get off the plane and you start wandering around. You don't have a map. You don't have an agenda. You're just there to experience and see what happens. I flew all the way to Sweden or wherever, and I'm just going to walk around.
Yeah, it was great.
But I got to see this temple, and I got to see this museum, and I got to see this sunset. I got a list. The fourth day, I'm only going to go to Sweden once in my life. I got to see these 5 things.
Yeah, but you've got to see and you've got to do, but also you've got to feel and you have to learn, and those are not always included.
No.
And that is why I travel, to gain knowledge of a culture and gain knowledge of a people and see how I can adapt my own knowledge to other people and to other philosophies. So what do you do that makes the present so important, since you are haunted by the past?
I am. I'm haunted by the past. So what do I do to make the present important?
Never seen you silent before.
Yeah, you got it. Very rarely am I silent. I have an answer for everything. I don't know. I'm always thinking of the past, and I'm always worried about the future. That seems to be my curse. And I try and live in the moment. I try and enjoy things. I try and tell myself over and over again, stop and smell the roses, pay attention, be present, as Terry would say. but I think there's a little squirrel cage in my brain thinking, what's next? Or still thinking about what happened, so that maybe the present misses me.
So, but are you thinking of the past positively or negatively?
I'm Irish. I always look at things as the glass is half empty. I'm sorry, that's the curse that I was brought up in. I'm the doom and gloom.
But you have such a wonderful past.
I do.
You have so many things so many successes and
I do.
so many wonderful experiences, and you just ignore those.
I went through therapy once, and I rattled off all these crazy things I'd done, like you, lots of different things, and I thought of that as a negative. Gee, I should have been on a 20-year trajectory and achieved this. I should be president of a company or something. And the therapist looked and said, I listened to all these things, and it sounds wonderful. It sounds like an adventure. And you describe it like it's a failure.
Sounds like parental voices to me.
Yeah, well, I definitely suffer. I have pictures of my parents still staring at me in the office here. You know, they're always overlooking me, always asking me, "Fall." You know, my father used to have a horrible. I shouldn't admit this, but since we're getting real here, I always thought it was a horrible thing he did, but he did it every year till the day he died. At the end of the year, he would love to get together around the holidays, and he would say, "So where do you think you went wrong the last year?" Never what you did right. It was always like, let's focus on what went wrong. I don't know what his theory was, but somehow you're supposed to focus on. And I was like, what a horrible thing to say. You're assuming that I went wrong last year. Maybe last year was great.
Yeah, yeah.
But that
it sounds like another decade of therapy for you.
You think so? The future is clear now here. Right?
Yeah,
I'm sorry to say, but that is true, and I think there is a lot of that. I am also fascinated with the past. I'm fascinated with stories of the past. Love to always fascinated.
But that's
by
a whole different situation. Those are stories that you love. That
I love
encourage you.
Yeah, uplifting.
That you find hope in, and you find. Yeah. And you find resolve, you find solution.
Mm-hmm.
That is really important. I'm gonna get you a copy of Ryan Holiday's new book.
Okay,
so
I'd love it.
So you can think of stillness, because we will spend time on a podcast on that.
I'd love to talk about it, because I think that's a missing commodity in our world today. We never. I look at my daughter, who's in her late 20s now here, and she's emblematic of her whole generation. She's got earbuds in while the TV's on, while the iPad is open, and she's tweeting to somebody here. It's overstimulated, constant stimulation. That she never just. I used to try and force her when she was a teenager, and I'd go in the backyard and I'd say, "Now close your eyes, Dad." I'd say, "What do you hear?" "Nothing." "Well, come on, there's something. Do you hear that bird? Do you hear that cricket?" "Okay, I hear a cricket. Can we go back and do something now?" You know, that we live in an oversaturated, overstimulated society.
Yeah, I think it's so easy, if we're not careful, to regard today as being boring or uneventful.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah, it seems minor. The big things either happened or are going to happen. Today is just okay. Today is just no big deal. And today is the miracle. We're alive. It's all around you. Yeah.
Well, that brings us to my next point. And so what is it about today that can make it a worthy effort of time? And I think the very first thing we need to do, and we've talked about it on the podcast, especially with Terry, we've talked about it on the podcast with several people, though, is that to truly live in the present means to pay attention.
Yes.
And so that means you have to discard this other crap from your brain, and that you're just paying attention to right now, focused on what I'm saying right now, and focus on what you're thinking, the instruments you need to look at, all your little dials in front of you, to make sure your dials and levels are right.
I'm sorry, what did you say? I wasn't listening here. I was doing something.
I was looking at my dials.
Right.
And I know that with my ever-turning, what I call it, monkey mind, that I'm always thinking something about something other than what I'm doing at this very present moment.
Yeah, right.
As a matter of fact, I'm thinking this is so common with us in conversation, is I'm thinking more about the next question than what we're doing and talking about here. And that
Yes.
is just, that's terrible.
I'm always trying to teach and work with hosts not to do that. And they all want to do it because they have an agenda. There's a timetable. The time's ticking away. Points I want to cover here. And I always say the example would be, let's say you're doing a financial show, and you're asking somebody what's going to happen in the stock market. I think the stock market's going to crash tomorrow. Great. And what's your favorite color? Not even listening to what they're saying here. What did he just say? We're always thinking of the next thing.
Yeah. I wish now when I'm writing up my notes for a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
I can become not isolated, but I can become totally immersed in what I'm doing. I don't hear anything. I go to, I write it at the business club.
Right.
I don't hear anything. I don't see anything. I don't know what's going on. If somebody's walking by, I don't pay attention because I'm so fully immersed in this present activity.
Right.
Especially like today when I was running late and I didn't have quite the normal time that I normally have. I was extremely focused on today on what we would be doing, and in here I come to find myself trying to pay attention to my notes that I wrote when I should just be listening to what the heck is going on.
And having, that's the beauty of this medium. It's one of the few. I have one show host that comes in and he says, "This is the only time in my week that I come in without an agenda, and willing to just relax and talk and meet people, have a conversation." We don't live in a world where we're capable of having extended conversations. We're in a rush. Give it to me quickly.
Yeah. We are, I know we're entering into the what I think is a primary discussion of our day today, which has to do with presence and mindfulness. And as I think about those, there's another old quote I've used that I love, and I think it's all about paying attention. And Susan Ertz, whom I know nothing about, but I know she wrote this quote, so I love this quote. Millions of people long for immortality who do not know what to do on a rainy Sunday afternoon.
Boy, isn't that the truth? There's a profound statement. I'm all for forever, but I can't figure out what to do with myself for 5 minutes.
When I don't have something on my list to do.
Yeah. Well, you said when you retired from had this big important career as a business coach and busy and going all the time, making money, and then you set that aside and started this podcast and this journey, and you said many's the day I looked at my calendar, there was nothing on it, and that was horrifying to you.
Yeah, it no longer is. Now I'm pissed if I see little dots on my iPhone. What do I have to do today? I don't want to do that. I'd rather read or write or go to the museum
or experience or try something.
Do something. Yeah.
So we haven't talked about the future. You talked about the past.
That is. It's funny that you said that because that is the next step. Do you want to take a break or do you want to just move on?
Let's just keep going. We're almost done. We're coming to the close here.
Okay. Now we're talking about what I live for. I'm a dreamer. I'm a hoper. Someone that always has future in mind, and sometimes to my detriment because my mind can get so entrenched in the future, I neglect paying attention to the present.
Yeah.
I am thinking of what I'm going to do, what's going to happen next, what I'm going to say next, what's going on next.
And you're excited at thinking of the future. You're one of the few people I know that's excited about change. Most people dread change, fight change, hate change. You seem to get giddy about it.
Oh, yes, I can't see not change. Although, let's understand one thing about change that I think is, I'm not sure how sure it has to do with our subject matter, but I'll tell you what helps me change is there are certain things I do not want changed.
Okay.
I have to have roots. And it's from the roots, and my wife has always been my strongest root. I wrote a short story about it one day, one day, decades ago.
Right.
But how she is sort of the backbone. But don't change the furniture in a room. Do not change the furniture in any of our rooms.
My wife loves to do that and drives me crazy. I'll come home and she's rearranged the furniture. Why?
Oh, I couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And it's why when I left the big major seeker-friendly 15,000 person church and went to a little 300 person evangelical church that uses liturgy and does the same thing every week. And we used to try to do something different every week, something new and exciting.
You're talking to a Catholic. It's the same Mass for 1,000 years, yeah.
I found myself rooted in doing the same thing every week. I would get pissed off if they had a special event.
Right. I love routines. I love consistency. I find a comfort in the knowing how this is going to go.
And now,
the structure to it.
I just need to know how. I just need to have roots in a couple of places, and those are probably two big places. Probably the two biggest places of my mind that allow me to be creative, because I don't have to be creative in those moments. I don't have to think of something new. I don't have to think of if I'm going to travel somewhere or what are my philosophical thoughts at the moment. I can just sit down and ponder and maybe, as Ryan Holiday says, I can be still. This is a time for me to be quiet. And
we did a show once a long time ago. I don't know if you remember this, but you talked about, I don't know if we used the word tradition. I'm thinking more of ceremonies. I can't think of the right word, but things we invoke to get us through certain processes. Somebody dies. There is a process you go through, and you don't have to think at that moment. You just step into it. And you know how to handle it and how to grieve and how to honor them and all that stuff. Traditions, that's what we did a show on. And I think traditions are going out the window. And
we did a show on that?
A long time ago.
That's a good topic. We should do that show again.
Okay, because I think we live in a society longing for traditions. Look at how they're trying to build traditional old towns in modern suburbia here.
Right.
We seek those roots. We seek those connections. We seek with the past. We seek those comfort foods, those things that we can rely upon and count upon all the time.
So I know my answer. What's your answer? What does that have to do with the future?
I think that tradition offset the comfort of having a routine fights the fear of the future, because the future is all about uncertainty and change. Let's face it, at its root.
And isn't that cool? What's wrong with that?
Oh,
I mean, you just gave me two. You just gave me goosebumps.
I gave you goosebumps. I think for most people, the uncertainty of change is frightening, and that's why they stay even in uncomfortable situations. They'd rather stay where they're at than to venture out into the unknown.
I used to say it as women who live in abusive situations is that a bad known is better than any unknown.
We had a woman on, just another author. She was talking about something about the title of her book was basically how an unhappy, and she used the word fat woman, finally learned to free herself. And she said so many, for her, eating was a compulsion, and she found herself, at least it explained why I was unhappy. I'm fat. And by getting rid of it, now I have no excuse. Why am I unhappy?
So now you can move forward to the future.
So I think if you have something to root yourself on, I'll give you kind of a weird example. I always thought my parents were there for me. I'll say something very positive about. Always there, always support me, may not understand me, may not like what I do, but always there for me. And that gave me a comfort. They didn't know I was going to do this, but I wandered the world. I left and went to California. I did all these crazy things because I always felt like I had some roots. I could go home. If all else failed, I could go home. They would accept me. There was, and that gave me the freedom to go out and explore. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but knowing that there was somebody got your
that's
back.
what we're talking about. Somebody that has your back, and we're talking traditions. And traditions, I want to use the word roots,
Right.
because I am planting my roots in, and my roots give me the freedom to explore.
Right.
They give, because I have some place to go back to. That's why I'm not afraid of change, because I have certain things that don't change, and I can always return to those.
Right. You got some stability,
And I have a place to go. It's not that I live a totally chaotic life. I don't live a chaotic life.
For example, if you lived on the street, as horrible as we know many people live, that day-to-day fear of how am I going to get my next meal? What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen in 10 minutes? I think the future is frightening. And I'll give this real quick example. I've mentioned, I think, in the show before, I adopted, my only daughter is adopted from a little village in Mexico. Horrible life, beat up, abused, horrible things happen. We adopt her, and to this day, she struggles with the future. There was no future for the first 10 years. It was all about now. How do I survive the next 10 minutes without getting beat up or hungry or bad things happening? So for her, the future is still a concept she can't quite accept. She never wants to dwell on the past because the past was best. She only lives in the moment. And that means she's always late, and she never can plan, and she can't think of the future. I've never seen that in anybody as clearly as in her. So the future is a luxury. You go to Africa, do they think about the future?
No, there is no such thing as tomorrow.
Right.
And we're talking rural.
Yes, right.
I'm not
villages.
talking,
right.
I'm not talking urban. I'm talking rural Africa. There is no such thing as tomorrow. Every day is exactly the same thing, so they anticipate nothing new for tomorrow. That's as you move up the Maslowian pyramid chart.
Future is a luxury to think about for those that are starving or hungry or in trouble or desperate. There's no past.
But now for the most of us, that is talking about those that are suffering. But for the most of us, like me,
those listening to this podcast,
instance, like me,
right.
The future is all about hope.
Mm-hmm.
I always have hope that for others it may be fear or regret, but for me, it's what Soren Kierkegaard said: life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forward. And I'm always evaluating the past and how can I change it and move it toward the future.
Now you passed the threshold, though, in your life. I don't know if you want to disclose how old you are, but you went through one of those numbers where everybody says, and you start thinking there's less time ahead than there is behind me here.
Yeah, there is, but that doesn't make a difference. I have no control over that. So I just live. It makes me want to live every day more intentionally. Not that I do it, but I am thinking about it more, and my understanding of my personal past, my experiences, and I have a lot of very difficult things in my past.
You disclosed some of them, yeah. You didn't have the
and my
happiest
learnings
of childhood,
and my hope for the future. This always gives me hope, and therefore I project what I'm going to do in the future with hope. I travel. I work with people in Uganda. I follow as well as I love my son and his baseball career. I review successes that I've experienced. They give me a certain degree. All of this gives me a degree of hope for the future, that things are going to turn out okay. And because I've not experienced in the last, number of decades, terrible, terrible things. But then again, Paul, as we talked about earlier, of the people with bad pasts, their difficult pasts, it really impacts the way they're looking for future. And that's people that have suffered a life of pain and suffering. So getting them to imagine hope is a most trying endeavor.
Yes.
So what is the answer for these people? And I believe it's all about somehow impacting the present, and that what can be done in creating a life worth living. I I meet people in 12-step programs that have experienced a life that, makes my life look like a sweet neighborhood.
You've had a couple in here to talk about it. It's mind-boggling what they've gone through.
And yet, the ones that go through the program, I see a burgeoning hope and surprising success of their lives when they begin to take personal control. And as well as we all believe in the 12-step program, is deepening and assistance on a higher power. That
surrender to that, right? I think that's a big part of it. I have trouble surrendering. I'm sorry, I try to be a practicing Catholic and Christian, but I still have trouble surrendering to God and let go, let God. That stuff, that's a hard one for me to live every day. And I think that you're saying you've surrendered a certain thing. I'm going to die. Okay, I have no control over it, so I'm just going to surrender. That's the way my father was. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about things I have no control over.
Paul, I use a different word
than
surrender. As a matter of fact, I wrote a post on it that I didn't post because I couldn't put it together the way I wanted it to put together. But a word I prefer over surrender?
What?
And that's acceptance. I accept reality. I don't surrender over to the power of God. I accept it because it's going to happen no matter what I do anyway.
Right.
God's will is going to happen no matter what I think or do.
Right.
So I accept this power and let it have the control that it would have, as well as I personally don't like the phrase "let go and let God," because I believe it's a co-creative process.
Yeah,
I believe it's as much up to me as it is up to a higher power to make my life okay, and that if I just sit around and do nothing, this higher power is not going to jump off its seat and do something for me. I must make some kinds of actions.
And yet I look at my mother's life, who was, when she was youthful, very fun, very outgoing, very funny person. But as she got older, she got sick, she got ill, she got problems, she got Parkinson's. And her favorite quote was the Dylan Thomas quote, "Don't go gently into that deep dark night."
So she still had a hope.
She thought it was a fight.
As a fight?
She fought every kind of change. She fought everything coming. She felt she was in constant fighting with God and with everything that was being dealt her, and so is she
the Irish contingent?
Yes, they're fighters.
Yes,
they're fighters.
Yes,
and so she didn't accept the future. She didn't look forward to the future. She looked back at the past as happier times, and she looked at the future as a struggle, as a fight, and a resistance. I didn't have any control over it, so I'm not going to accept it. That's what you're going to give me, God? F you. I'm going to fight it.
Yeah. In wrapping up, I'd like to encourage everybody to fight for optimism. And I know that is so difficult for so many people, but the future is for you to make. You are what you have been becoming. So start becoming something you want to be, even as you said, incrementally. Don't expect giant step changes, but expect wonderful little changes as you move your life into hope and what could be possible, and how you can live a better life, love more, serve more. There are several answers to that, but I really encourage people to use the present, living in the present with a view toward a positive future. And so in conclusion, it appears to me the best route to use the variables of time is use the past to inform the present, although don't let the negative past get to you. Use the future to determine your current direction, and live the present with unabashed delight and focus.